Elisha was a prophet of God, a man chosen to deliver his messages and perform his wonders. His life and deeds are a testament to the power of faith and divine intervention. He lived in a time of kings and kingdoms, battles and miracles. The world around him was tumultuous, filled with political intrigue and warfare, yet amidst this chaos, Elisha stood as a beacon of hope and divine power. We find his story in the Old Testament book of 2 Kings. This ancient text chronicles his journey, his miracles, and his unwavering faith in God. It is a story that has inspired countless generations. Elisha wasn't born into a life of prophecy. He came from humble beginnings, living in a simple rural village. His early life was far removed from the grandeur of kings and the drama of prophets. He was a farmer, a worker of the land. His days were spent ploughing fields, harvesting crops and tending to livestock. It was a life of hard work and simplicity, far from the extraordinary path that lay ahead. But God had a special plan for him, a call to follow in the footsteps of the great prophet Elijah. This divine calling would transform his life, taking him from the fields to the forefront of God's work on earth. One day Elijah approached Elisha. This encounter was no ordinary meeting, it was a moment orchestrated by God. Elijah, the revered prophet, saw in Elisha the potential for greatness, the capacity to carry on his prophetic mission. He placed his mantle, a symbol of his prophetic calling, on Elisha's shoulders. This act was rich in symbolism, signifying the transfer of spiritual authority and responsibility. It was a moment of divine appointment, a passing of the torch. It was a moment of divine appointment, a passing of the torch. Elisha was now chosen to continue the work of Elijah, to be God's voice and hands among the people. This mantle was not just a piece of cloth. It was a symbol of the weighty responsibility and honor bestowed upon him. Elisha accepted his calling with humility and courage. He understood the gravity of the task ahead. Yet he did not shy away. Instead, he embraced it, ready to serve God and his people with all his heart. He left behind his old life and stepped into the unknown, ready to serve God and his people. This decision marked the beginning of a remarkable journey, one that would be filled with challenges, miracles, and profound moments of faith. Elisha's life was marked by extraordinary miracles. His faith and obedience to God enabled him to perform acts that defied natural laws, showcasing the power of the divine. He parted the Jordan River, multiplied a widow's oil, and provided for those in desperate need. These miracles were not just displays of power. They were acts of compassion and provision, meeting the needs of the people, and even raised a boy from the dead. This miracle, perhaps one of the most profound, demonstrated the power of life over death, a testament to God's ultimate authority. But his story isn't just about spectacle. It's about the power of faith, the reality of God's intervention, and the importance of mercy in a world often consumed by conflict. Elisha's actions were guided by a deep sense of compassion and justice. It's about the power of faith, the reality of God's intervention, and the importance of mercy in a world often consumed by conflict. Elisha's life serves as a powerful reminder that faith can move mountains and that divine intervention is always at hand. Elisha's story reminds us that God sees us, calls us, and equips us for his purpose. No matter how ordinary we may feel, we are all capable of extraordinary things when we align ourselves with his will. Like Elisha, we may feel inadequate or afraid. The path ahead may seem daunting, filled with uncertainties and challenges, but it is in these moments of doubt that our faith is tested and strengthened. But when we say yes to God, he can do extraordinary things through ordinary people. Elisha's life is a testament to this truth, showing us that with faith, courage, and obedience, we too can be instruments of God's miraculous work in the world. Imagine a group of young prophets, eager to learn and serve God. These were not just any young men, they were dedicated students, committed to deepening their understanding of divine wisdom and living out their faith in every aspect of their lives. They were working alongside Elisha, expanding their dwelling place. The need for more space was pressing as their numbers grew and their mission expanded. They needed a place where they could gather, study and pray without the constraints of a cramped environment. They needed more space to study, pray, and grow in their faith. This was not just a physical expansion, but a spiritual one as well. The new space would allow them to invite more students, to spread their teachings, and to create a sanctuary of learning and devotion. As they chopped down trees, a borrowed axe head flew off its handle. This was a significant setback. The axe was not just a tool, it was a borrowed item, a symbol of trust and responsibility. Losing it meant more than just a delay in their work. It plunged into the depths of the Jordan River. The river, with its strong currents and murky depths, seemed to swallow the axe head whole, making its retrieval appear impossible. The young man who had borrowed the axe was filled with despair. The loss of the axe head was more than just an inconvenience. It represented a significant financial burden. In those times, tools were valuable and not easily replaced. The borrower faced the daunting prospect of repaying a debt he could not afford. It represented a financial burden the borrower could not bear. The weight of this responsibility was heavy on his shoulders. He knew that without the axe, their work would be delayed, and his reputation would be tarnished. Distressed, the man cried out to Elisha. His plea was filled with desperation and hope. He knew that Elisha was a man of God, capable of performing miracles. In his moment of need, he turned to the prophet, seeking divine intervention. The prophet listened with compassion. Elisha understood the gravity of the situation. He saw the young man's distress and felt his pain. With a calm and reassuring presence, Elisha prepared to act. He took a stick and tossed it into the water, a simple act of faith. This act, though seemingly insignificant, was a profound demonstration of trust in God's power. Elisha's faith was unwavering, and he believed that God would respond to their need. In that instant, the impossible happened. The water, which had seemed so unforgiving, began to stir. Ripples formed on the surface, and a sense of anticipation filled the air. The young men watched in awe, their hearts filled with hope. The heavy iron axe head miraculously floated to the surface. This was no ordinary event. The laws of nature had been defied and a miracle had occurred. The young men were witnesses to a divine intervention, a moment that would strengthen their faith forever. Elisha's response wasn't just about retrieving a lost tool. It was a powerful lesson in faith and trust. By performing this miracle, Elisha showed that God's power is limitless and that he cares deeply for his people. It was about restoring a man's faith and demonstrating God's care for even the smallest details of our lives. The young man, now holding the recovered axe head, felt a renewed sense of hope and gratitude. His faith in God and in Elisha was stronger than ever. This miracle teaches us about the boundless nature of God's power. It reminds us that no problem is too big or too small for God to handle. His power transcends the natural world, and his love for us knows no bounds. It reminds us that nothing is too small for God to care about. Every detail of our lives matters to him. From the grandest challenges to the tiniest concerns, God is always there, ready to help and provide. He sees our struggles, hears our cries, and responds with love and provision. This story of the floating axe head is a testament to God's unwavering care and the miracles that can happen when we place our trust in him. Elisha's miracles weren't confined to everyday objects. He also possessed a keen awareness of the spiritual realm. The king of Aram, a nation hostile to Israel, was constantly frustrated by Elisha's ability to anticipate and thwart his military plans. The Aramean king, enraged, dispatched a powerful army to capture Elisha. Under the cover of darkness, the Aramean soldiers surrounded the city of Dothan, where Elisha was staying. Imagine the scene. A city encircled by enemy troops, the threat of violence hanging heavy in the air. Elisha's servant woke up terrified. He cried out, "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?" Elisha's response was calm and reassuring. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Elisha prayed, and God answered with a breathtaking display of power. He opened the servant's eyes, allowing him to see the invisible army of God, chariots of fire and horses of fire surrounding Elisha, a testament to God's protective presence. Elisha then prayed for the Aramean soldiers, not for their destruction, but for their blindness. Blinded by a divine power they could not comprehend, the Aramean soldiers stumbled about, powerless and confused. They had come with the intent to conquer, to lay waste to the land of Israel, but now they found themselves in a state of utter disarray. Their vision was taken from them, and with it their sense of direction and purpose. They were like lost children in a foreign land, unable to find their way or understand what had befallen them. Elisha, instead of striking them down in their vulnerability, did something extraordinary. He saw their helplessness, their confusion, and chose a path that defied the expectations of both his allies and his enemies. In a world where might often makes right, Elisha's actions were a beacon of a different kind of power, a power rooted in compassion and wisdom. He approached them and said, "Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you are looking for." His voice was calm and reassuring, a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded them. The soldiers, having no other option, followed him, trusting in the voice of the one who had shown them mercy instead of wrath. Elisha led the blinded army, not to a trap or an ambush, but to Samaria, the very heart of the nation they had come to attack. As they entered the city, the people of Samaria watched in astonishment. What was this? Their enemies, led by their prophet, walking into their city without a fight? It was a sight that defied all logic and expectation. Imagine the astonishment of the Israelite king when he saw his enemy delivered into his hands. He had prepared for battle, for bloodshed, and now here were his foes, vulnerable and at his mercy. The king's mind raced with possibilities. This was an opportunity to end the threat once and for all, to strike a decisive blow against his enemies. His first instinct was to strike them down. The urge to eliminate the threat, to secure his kingdom's safety through force, was strong. He could almost feel the weight of the sword in his hand, the finality of the act that would rid him of his enemies. But Elisha, filled with the Spirit of God, intervened. He saw beyond the immediate threat, beyond the fear and anger that clouded judgment. He stepped forward, placing himself between the king and the soldiers, and spoke words that would change the course of history. He urged the king to show mercy. "Would you kill those you have captured with your own sword or bow?" he asked. "Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink and then go back to their master." His words were a call to a higher standard, a reminder that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the capacity to show compassion. "Prepare a great feast for them," Elisha instructed. The king, moved by the prophet's wisdom, ordered a banquet to be prepared. The tables were set, laden with food and drink, a feast fit for a celebration, not a battlefield. The soldiers, still bewildered, were invited to sit and partake in the meal. So they fed their enemies, offering them bread and water in a gesture of radical hospitality. The act was more than just feeding the hungry. It was a profound statement of peace and reconciliation. The soldiers who had come to destroy now found themselves recipients of kindness and generosity. Imagine the scene: former enemies sharing a meal, their weapons laid down, their hearts softened by an unexpected act of kindness. The tension that had once filled the air was replaced by a sense of shared humanity. They were no longer just soldiers of opposing sides, they were men breaking bread together, finding common ground in the simple act of sharing a meal. The Aramean army, humbled and deeply moved by the Israelites' compassion, returned to their land. They carried with them not just the memory of the feast, but the lesson that had been imparted. A lesson in mercy, in the power of kindness to transform hearts and minds. The siege was broken, not through bloodshed, but through an act of extravagant grace. It was a victory not just for Israel, but for the ideals of peace and humanity. In a world often torn apart by conflict, this story stands as a testament to the power of compassion and the possibility of reconciliation, even with those we consider our enemies.